Every Wednesday, a plane lands in Kulivik with 0 passengers on the manifest. I know that because I'm the one who logs it. For the first 3 weeks, that was exactly what I saw. A Tundra Link caravan touching down on a gravel strip in western Alaska, taxiing up to the apron, shutting down, opening its cargo door, and revealing nothing but mail bins, medical freight, and whatever else Bethel had decided our little village needed that week. No movement in the cabin, no luggage in the overhead space, no one in the seats. Then a woman in town told me that same flight had carried passengers every Wednesday for years. Nurses, inspectors, dentists, health workers, government people, 5 or 6 at a time. So I checked again the following week. On final approach, through the binoculars, I thought I saw them. Dark shapes in the cabin windows, sitting upright, facing forward, perfectly still. Then the plane landed, and the cabin was empty. That was the first moment I should have understood something was wrong. Not wrong in the manageable, bureaucratic way I was used to. Not wrong in the way a fuel receipt is wrong, or a runway light is down, or a freight company sends the wrong pallet. I mean wrong in the deeper sense. Wrong in the way weather is wrong right before it kills somebody. Wrong in the way a smile is wrong when it arrives half a second too late. But at the time I still thought it might be paperwork. That's because I took the job at Kulivik Regional Airport when my marriage was falling apart, and a man whose life is quietly coming apart will believe almost anything is a paperwork problem if it lets him postpone the larger truth. That's the honest version. The version I told my mother was that I had always wanted to see Alaska. The version I told the FAA interviewer was that I thrived in low-volume operational environments and was passionate about rural infrastructure. Nobody believed me, and I got the job anyway, because nobody wants to work in Kulivik. Kulivik sits on the western edge of Alaska's interior, about 90 air miles northeast of Bethel, accessible only by plane or by snow machine when the river freezes solid enough to trust. Population hovers around 300 depending on season, illness, and whether the weather has recently made travel impossible. The place isn't hostile. That's important. When people hear remote Alaska, they imagine a settlement carved out of violence, some hard little outpost where every man drinks too much and every dog looks half wild. Kulivik wasn't like that. It was a real place with real people trying to get through the year, the way people anywhere try to get through it. There was a school, a health clinic, a tribal council office, a general store that also functioned as a post office if you were flexible about definitions. There was a community hall where people ate together often enough that being alone too many nights in a row started to feel like a statement. The airport, and I use the term generously, was a single 3,200-foot gravel runway, a windsock, a corrugated metal operations building about the size of a double-wide trailer, and a fuel depot that got resupplied by barge once a year. My title was Airport Operations Coordinator, which sounded respectable until you broke down what it actually meant: weather observer, fuel technician, grounds crew, bird strike mitigation, record keeper, janitor, occasional mechanic by necessity, and poor judgment. My supervisor was a woman named Deb Kilrea out of DOT and PF's regional office in Fairbanks. I spoke to her every Tuesday morning for exactly 12 minutes. That was not an exaggeration. Deb spoke in efficient blocks of time, like she was afraid an extra syllable might turn into a budget request. I started in September. By the 3rd week of October, I understood why the previous coordinator had left after 5 months, and the one before her after 3. Kulivik wasn't hard in the dramatic way. It was hard in the quiet way. The tundra ran flat and enormous in every direction. To the south, the river cut a dull line through the land. To the east, a low ridge of spruce looked like a smear of dark paint on the horizon. And above all of it was sky, too much sky. The biggest sky I had ever seen in my life. At first, it felt like freedom. By the third week, it felt like exposure. Like if something had decided to watch you, there would be nowhere to hide from it because the world itself had agreed to remain open. Still, the people in town were kind to me. Kinder than they had any reason to be. A woman named Grace Tulamak taught me cribbage at the community hall and informed me each night with dry consistency that I was somehow getting worse. A 13-year-old kid named Elias liked to ride his ATV out to the runway and sit on the hood, watching planes land. He waved at every pilot. Some of them waved back. This is what I need you to understand before I tell you the rest. Kulivik was not a cursed caricature in the middle of nowhere, waiting for an outsider to arrive and discover how spooky the locals were. It was not that kind of story. The people there were not stupid. They were not blind. They were not eager to walk into disaster because the plot required them to. What happened in Kulivik happened in a place full of practical people making decisions that, from where they stood, made sense. The flights came in roughly 5 times a week during the fall, mostly mail and freight from Bethel. Twice a week there was a scheduled passenger run, a Cessna Caravan operated by a regional carrier called Tundra Link. The Wednesday run was Flight TL471. That one usually handled health traffic, nurses rotating through the clinic, social workers, inspectors, the occasional dentist, sometimes a state employee nobody in town recognized and nobody missed when they left. The system was simple. I'd receive a manifest by email the night before or the morning of. I'd prep the fuel if needed, check the runway for debris and foxes, make sure nobody had decided the threshold markers were a good place to leave a snow machine, and then I'd log the arrival and departure. Simple work. Mindless, almost. I liked that about it. The first manifest for TL471 that caught my attention came in on October 9th. 0 passengers. Cargo only. Medical supplies. Mail. A crate of frozen chicken for the store. No names attached to the passenger column. Not one. The plane landed at 11:40 a.m., right on time. The pilot was Harlan Driss, a quiet man in his 50s with a gray mustache and the kind of face you get from 30 years of staring through bad weather and pretending it's routine. He taxied in. I marshaled him to the apron, and he shut down. I opened the cargo door and started unloading. Harlan came around the tail and lit a cigarette, which he absolutely should not have done that. Close to the fuel depot, but nobody in Kulivik was going to sight him, and he knew it. Manifest says 0 passengers, I said. I was making conversation, nothing more. He looked at me in a way I couldn't place then and can't forget now. Not startled, not annoyed, more like I had said something unnecessary. That's right, he said. Light day. He didn't answer. He finished his cigarette, climbed back in, and was gone inside 20 minutes. The following Wednesday, TL471 again showed 0 passengers. And again the Wednesday after that. At first I assumed it was seasonal. By late October, fewer people were moving in and out. The weather was getting worse. Freeze-up changes, travel patterns. That was explanation enough for a man who had come to Kulivik, mostly because he didn't want to think too hard. Then Grace said something that lodged in my head. We were at the community hall on a Thursday night playing cribbage at one of the folding tables under fluorescent lights that made everybody look slightly embalmed. Grace was counting her hand aloud the way she always did, narrating each combination as if she were teaching a child. 15-2, 15-4, and a pair of 6, she said, moving her peg. You hear the Wednesday plane coming yesterday? Yeah, I said, cargo run. Used to be passengers on that one. I looked up. What? Every week, for years? It's probably seasonal, I said, nobody flying in much now. Grace didn't look up from the board. There are always passengers on that flight, even in January, even in breakup. That's the health flight. Manifest said cargo only. She made a sound, not a laugh, not exactly disbelief, something smaller and drier. My niece works dispatch in Bethel, she said. She books those passengers. I let that sit for a second. She books who? The nurses, the inspectors, whoever's coming through. She says she sends 5 or 6 names most weeks. I stared at her. Then somebody's making a mistake somewhere. That's when she looked at me, not unkindly, but with a heaviness behind her eyes that made me feel like I had wandered into a conversation already in progress. You should ask about that, she said. About what? About where they're going. I called Deb Kilrea the next Tuesday. I've got a recurring discrepancy on TL471, I told her. The Wednesday Tundra Link run. My manifests have shown 0 passengers for 3 weeks, but I'm hearing Bethel Dispatch is booking confirmed names onto that flight. There was a pause. It wasn't long. Another person might not have noticed it, but Deb was the kind of woman who moved through silence the way some people move through deep water, quickly and with purpose. She filled gaps instinctively. A pause from her meant calculation. Probably a system of record issue, she said. Bethel's been migrating software and there have been sync problems. Should I call Tundra Link directly? No. The word came too fast. Then her tone corrected itself. I'll handle it. Okay. Stay in your lane on this one. I remember shifting the phone from one hand to the other. What exactly does that mean? Another pause. This one longer. Then she said, quietly enough that I almost wondered if she meant to say it at all. You're not the first person to notice. Before I could ask what that meant, she cleared her throat and added in her regular voice, log what comes in through your system. That's your job. Then she ended the call. I told myself that was a supervisor being territorial. Nothing more. Maybe a software migration really had broken something upstream. Maybe the passenger names were getting scrubbed before they reached my local manifest. Maybe Grace's niece was exaggerating. Maybe Deb had dealt with this before and didn't want me muddying the chain of responsibility. Maybe. On November 6th, TL471 landed at 11:35 a.m. Manifest 0 passengers. Harlan at the controls. I unloaded more medical supplies, more mail, and a heavy white case with no labels that did not appear anywhere on the cargo list. I set it aside and checked the manifest again just in case I had missed a line. Nothing. That for the clinic? I asked. Harlan took a drag off his cigarette and looked at the case instead of at me. That's right. It's not on the cargo manifest. Take it up with dispatch. Harlan, I said, is anyone booking onto this flight in Bethel? He had already turned toward the cockpit. He stopped, but didn't turn back. The manifest is the manifest, he said. That doesn't answer the question. It answers the only question that matters. He climbed in and left. That night I couldn't sleep. Not because I heard voices in the wind. Not because of dread exactly. I couldn't sleep because the numbers didn't match, and nobody in authority seemed interested in explaining why. That kind of thing gets under my skin. Always has. I am at heart the kind of man who believes order is fragile and paperwork is what keeps it alive. So I started keeping my own records. Every Wednesday I wrote down the flight number, time of arrival, manifest received, cargo listed, cargo actually delivered, and any visual anomalies I could note without sounding ridiculous even to myself. I stood in the operations building window with binoculars and watched the caravan come in. The Cessna 208B has cabin windows big enough that, under decent light, you can see whether the seats are occupied. Every Wednesday, what I saw after landing matched the manifest. Empty cabin, empty seats, no luggage. So either the booking system in Bethel was wrong, or the passengers were being offloaded before departure, or there was some administrative explanation so tedious and ordinary that I would eventually be embarrassed for having cared. I almost let it go. Then Elias saw them. It was November 20th. Elias was at the runway edge like usual, standing on the hood of his ATV with his gloved hands in his pockets as TL471 came in low over the tundra. I waved at him. He didn't wave back. That alone got my attention. When Harlan taxied to the apron and shut down, Elias drove over to me instead of staying where he was. His face had that look kids get when they've seen something that doesn't fit into the available drawers in their head. "There's people on that plane," he said. "Nobody," I told him. "Cargo only." I saw them. The light plays tricks out here. They were sitting in the seats. I glanced at the cabin windows. From where I stood, I could see the interior clearly. Empty gray seats. No one there. "Elias, there's nobody in—" "They weren't moving," he said. That stopped me. He wasn't speaking dramatically. He wasn't trying to scare me. He was reporting. "None of them moved," he said. "They were all just looking forward." I looked back at the plane. Empty. By the time I turned around again, Elias was already riding away. That was the first Wednesday he didn't wave goodbye to the pilot. I wish I could tell you I became brave after that I launched an investigation, that I made 100 furious calls and forced somebody to answer the basic question of why a flight with no passengers kept arriving in a village where people swore passengers had been booked. I didn't. I wrote it in the notebook. I logged the flight. Cargo only. 0 passengers. And I stayed in my lane, because that is what systems teach you to do when they have been in place longer than your sense of alarm. December came, and with it the real cold. 30 below, then 40. The river froze. The day collapsed in on itself until by 3 in the afternoon the sky was already darkening. In that kind of environment, the systems around you stop feeling like conveniences and start feeling like extensions of your mind. Light, heat, fuel, internet. A scheduled phone call every Tuesday with a woman in Fairbanks who sounds annoyed that you exist. You maintain them because letting them slip feels too much like letting yourself slip with them. TL-471 kept coming. Every Wednesday, 0 passengers. Cargo only. And the cargo got stranger. Unmarked crates for the clinic. Sealed white containers that didn't appear on any freight sheet. Once a soft-sided cooler that was warm to the touch, even in sub-zero air. I stopped Harlan beside the wing and asked him about it. "Medical samples?" he said. "Why is it warm?" He gave me a long look. "Not your department?" I asked Grace about the clinic that same week. We were in the community hall again. The furnace was working so hard you could hear it in your teeth. It's been different, she said. The clinic? She nodded. Supplies every week. More than usual. But nobody's seen a nurse in a while. That doesn't make sense. It makes enough sense for people who are getting better. Better how? Grace pegged her cribbage hand and said very evenly, My cousin Doris has had a bad knee for 6 years. Could barely walk on it. She went into the clinic Tuesday night, came out Wednesday morning walking like she was 20. That's good. She doesn't remember going in. I said nothing. No paperwork, Grace continued. No consent form, no follow-up. No one remembers treating her because no one remembers seeing staff. But the knee is perfect. That doesn't happen. No, she said, it doesn't. Are people worried? Grace finally looked at me. People here have been ignored by the government for a very long time, she said. If something starts working, most folks aren't going to make trouble just because they don't understand it. She wasn't wrong. That's the part people on the outside always miss. They imagine suspicion comes free. It doesn't. Suspicion costs energy. It costs options. It costs alternatives. If you've spent your whole life being underserved, underfunded, and politely forgotten, and suddenly the clinic starts fixing things it has never been able to fix before, the question isn't just what is this? The question is what happens if we lose it? I understood that. I respected it. But I kept writing in the notebook. And on December 11th, I stopped pretending I was only curious. TL-471 landed at 11:42 m. Harlan taxied in, shut down, and opened the cargo door. 2 standard mail bins, a long plastic equipment case, then one of the white clinic crates. It was about the size of a microwave, smooth-sided, unlabeled, with a single groove around the middle, where it presumably opened. I need to see what's in that, I said. Harlan didn't answer right away. Then, no you don't. I've got freight coming through this airport every week that isn't on any manifest. If I get audited, that becomes my problem. He lifted the crate down and set it on the apron between us. It was cold, not cold from the air, cold in a way that felt active, like touching metal that was pulling warmth out of your hand on purpose. Open it, I said. He looked at me for a long time. I can't. Can't or won't? I don't know how. I thought he was lying. Then I realized he wasn't. I picked them up in Bethel, he said. Every Wednesday they're already on the plane when I get there. Who loads them? I don't know. Someone has to know. I asked. And? Nobody at the terminal claimed them. Nobody saw them loaded. They're just there. That's impossible. You're right. He said it so calmly it made the hair rise on my neck. It is impossible, he said. And yet it's been happening for almost a year. He nudged the crate toward me with one boot. The people in this village are healthier than they've been in decades, he said. I've decided that's enough for me. Then for the first time since I had met him, he looked me directly in the eyes. You should decide whether it's enough for you. A snow machine came in from the dark edge of the runway then, engine idling low. I hadn't heard it approach over the wind. The rider wore a balaclava and mirrored goggles, no skin visible, no identifying marks. Harlan handed over the crate without a word. The machine turned and headed toward town, toward the clinic. I watched it go until it disappeared into the white. Then I looked back at Harlan. He had already climbed into the cockpit. He never looked over his shoulder. That night, I called Deb off schedule. Wednesday, late, unannounced. she answered on the sixth ring. Deb, I need to talk to you about TL-471. It's late. I confronted Harlan. There's unmanifested cargo appearing on the aircraft before he arrives. The clinic's receiving medical freight with no origin, and people are... Stop. Her voice changed on that word. Not louder, not angrier, flatter, like a door being shut quietly on the other side of the wall. You were told to leave the manifest issue to me. I did for 2 months, and it's getting worse. Worse how? There's cargo with no paperwork. The clinic has no visible staff. People go in sick and come out healed and don't remember treatment. Deb was silent long enough that I checked the screen to make sure the call was still live. Then she said, Are people dying? No? Are they in danger? I thought about Doris's knee, about the white crate, about the way Harlan had said, I've decided that's enough for me. I don't know, I said, and that's not what I asked. People are getting better, I said finally. Then what exactly is the emergency? I didn't answer because I didn't have one that would survive contact with the sentence. Deb exhaled slowly. Kulivik is one of 235 rural airports in this state, she said. Most of them have problems I can't solve with the budget I have. If one of them is functioning, actually functioning, and the community isn't calling my office in a panic, then my job is to make sure the runway stays graded and the fuel depot doesn't explode. Deb, no, listen carefully. Your job is to log what comes through your system, not to go looking under rocks because you don't like what might be living there. There was a rustle on the line, papers shifting. Or maybe she wanted me to hear the sound of work continuing. Then very quietly, she added, Do not make me explain this twice. She hung up. I sat alone in the operations building with the furnace clicking on and off and understood something I had been refusing to name. Deb was not confused. Deb was not overloaded. Deb knew enough. Maybe not everything, maybe not the mechanics. Maybe not what was inside those crates or what exactly was happening in the clinic, but enough to understand the shape of the arrangement, enough to know the system had already made peace with it. The flight came. The cargo arrived. The people got better. And somebody else paid. January was the month everything should have become obvious. Instead, it became quiet. That was worse. The Wednesdays kept coming. TL-471 kept landing. The manifest kept saying 0 passengers. The cargo kept arriving. And I did what Deb had told me to do. I logged what came through my system. I graded the runway. I checked the fuel. I showed up at the community hall often enough that my absence didn't start conversations I didn't want to have. Outwardly, nothing changed. Inside, something had already shifted. I stopped checking the cabin windows. That wasn't because I believed the manifest. It was because I had started to suspect that what I might see wouldn't match it, and I didn't yet have a way to reconcile that. Kulivik, meanwhile, was doing better than it had any right to in the dead of winter. People were healthier, not just stable, better. A man named Thomas Slawuko had been on dialysis for 4 years. Everyone in town knew it. His schedule shaped how his family planned their lives. He went into the clinic one evening with his usual fatigue and came out the next morning standing straighter than I had ever seen him. Within a week, he wasn't on dialysis anymore. Tests in Bethel confirmed it. 2 functioning kidneys. His doctor called it a documentation error. Nobody in Kulivik argued. A girl who had lost partial vision in one eye could suddenly see again. A boy with recurring seizures went 3 weeks without a single episode. A woman with chronic joint damage stopped using a cane. It didn't happen all at once. It happened steadily, quietly, like something patient was working its way through a list. I kept writing in my notebook. I told myself I was documenting anomalies. What I was really doing was trying to build a structure strong enough to hold what I was beginning to suspect. Because the pattern wasn't just that people were getting better. The pattern was that the improvements tracked perfectly with the Wednesday flight. The cargo got heavier, not physically, not in a way I could prove, but in a way you feel when something stops behaving like an object and starts behaving like a presence. The white crates came every week now. Same size, same surface, same absence of labels. They never appeared on the manifest. They were always taken immediately, always by someone I didn't recognize, always delivered to the clinic. I stopped asking Harlan where they came from, not because I wasn't curious, because I had started to understand that curiosity had a boundary here, and pushing past it wasn't going to produce answers. It was going to produce consequences. Harlan didn't speak about it either, but the silence between us changed. Before, it had been the silence of two men doing a job. Now it was the silence of two men who knew the same thing and had made different decisions about what to do with it. Grace didn't bring it up again for a while. Not the passengers, not her niece in Bethel, not the clinic. That didn't mean she wasn't thinking about it. It meant she had already reached a conclusion, and she was waiting to see if I would reach the same one. By early February, I couldn't pretend anymore that this was a paperwork issue. The manifests were too consistent, the outcomes were too precise, and the absence of any official response was too complete. That's when I started asking a different question. Not why are there no passengers, but what happens to them before the plane lands? February 5th was a Wednesday. TL-471 was due at 11:30. At 11:15, my satellite phone rang. Not the office line. My personal phone, the number I had given to exactly 4 people. I almost didn't answer it. Out there, unknown calls don't happen by accident. They happen because something went out of its way to reach you. Hello? Is this the airport? A woman's voice. Young, breathing too fast. Yes, this is Kulivik Operations. My name is Rena Chak. I'm calling from Bethel. I was supposed to be on the flight to Kulivik today. I stepped closer to the window without meaning to. Okay. I'm a nurse. I checked in this morning. I got my boarding pass. I was sitting at the gate. She paused. And then I woke up in my hotel room. I felt something tighten in my chest. How long later? 4 hours? Did you miss the flight? I didn't miss it, she said, sharper now. I was there. I remember being there. I had my bag, I had my ID, I was waiting to board. What happened next? I don't know, she said. And that I don't know wasn't casual. It wasn't confusion, it was absence. When I woke up, she continued, my bag was gone, my boarding pass was gone, and when I called the airline, they told me I was never on the manifest. I turned my eyes to the horizon. The sky was white, flat, empty. DOT gave me your number, she said. Please, can you tell me if the plane landed? I saw it then, a dark shape cutting through the white, descending. It's on final approach, I said. Can you see inside? I raised the binoculars. The plane came in low over the tundra, wheels down, engine steady. I focused on the cabin windows, and this time, I didn't have to convince myself. There were people in those seats. 5, maybe 6, sitting upright, facing forward, not moving, not shifting with the vibration of descent, not reacting to anything, just there. Yes, I said. My voice didn't sound like mine. I see them. A sharp inhale on the other end. That's us, she said. What? There were 6 of us at the gate, she said. 6 people booked on that flight. I've been calling the others. None of us remember boarding. 2 of them can't remember their own names. One of them is in the ER. What happened to her? She started bleeding from her ears 20 minutes ago. The plane touched down. The figures didn't move. It rolled toward me. Still nothing. No reaction, no adjustment, no life in the movement. I'm going to check the cabin, I said. Don't. I have to. Whatever got on that plane instead of us, she said. You don't want to be near it when it gets out. The caravan taxied in. Harlan shut down the engine and stepped out like he always did. Calm, unhurried. Like this was another ordinary Wednesday. Behind him, through the windows, the shapes were still there. Cargo only, he said. Manifest clean. There are people in your cabin, I said. He didn't even look back. There's cargo in my cabin, he replied. That's what the manifest says. I can see them. You can see what you want to see. He lit his cigarette. Are you going to help me unload or not? I walked past him, up to the cargo door. The sat phone was still in my hand. I could hear Rena breathing. Slow now. Thicker. Like she was drifting somewhere she didn't want to go. I pulled the handle, opened the door. The cabin was empty. Completely empty. 13 seats. All of them unoccupied. No luggage. No bags. No sign that anyone had ever been there. Except the seats were warm. I touched the nearest one and pulled my hand back. It wasn't residual warmth. It wasn't delayed cooling. It was fresh. Immediate. Like someone had stood up seconds before I opened the door. And the air smelled wrong. Iodine. Sharp. Clinical. And underneath it, something organic. Something the iodine was trying to hide. They're gone, I said into the phone. Silence. Then, I don't remember calling you, Rena said. Her voice was different. Flat. Calm. Empty in a way I couldn't describe. You just called me, I said. I'm flying to Kulivik next Wednesday, she replied. I should get some rest. Rena, I'm sorry, she said. Wrong number. The line went dead. I stood there in the open cargo door of an empty plane, surrounded by seats that still held the memory of bodies that were no longer present. And I understood something in a way that bypassed language entirely. The passengers weren't missing. They were being processed. Something took them, used them, then returned them, close enough to normal that the world didn't break. But not whole, never whole, and whatever was taken was being delivered in crates to a clinic that no longer needed doctors. I closed the cargo door. Harlan didn't ask what I saw. He didn't need to. He already knew what I had decided to understand. That night I went to the community hall. I found Grace, and I told her everything. I found Grace sitting at the same table we always used. Cribbage board in front of her, cards in hand, like nothing had changed, like the world hadn't just shifted under my feet. I didn't sit down. I saw them, I said. She didn't look up. I know. That stopped me. You know. She set her cards down, folded her hands together on the table, and then she looked at me, not defensive, not surprised, just tired. I've known since spring, she said. I sat down slowly. You knew there were people on that plane? Yes. You knew they weren't showing up? Yes. You knew the clinic? Yes. She didn't let me finish any of the sentences. She didn't need to. How long? I asked. She thought about it. Long enough that it stopped being a question, she said. My niece in Bethel told me first, Grace continued. She books passengers, nurses, inspectors, whoever's rotating through. She started noticing something wasn't right. People were checking in. Boarding passes printed, bags loaded. But they weren't arriving, I said. They weren't arriving as passengers, she corrected. I felt that phrase settle somewhere I didn't want it to. What did you do? I asked. I talked to the council. And? They talked to the elders? And? Grace leaned back slightly. They talked among themselves for a long time. How long? Long enough that people stopped asking when they decide. And what did they decide? She held my gaze. They decided this was a gift. I laughed. I couldn't help it. It wasn't humor. It was pressure release. A gift? I said. Grace, people are being taken off a plane and turned into something else. That's not a gift. People here are being healed, she said. That's not the same thing. It is when you spent your whole life watching people die from things that shouldn't kill them. I leaned forward. Someone else is paying for it. Yes. People in Bethel. Yes. They don't know they can't consent. Grace didn't argue. She just said very quietly, no, they can't. That should have been the moment everything became simple. Right versus wrong. Take versus give. But it didn't feel simple, because I had seen Thomas walking. I had seen Doris stand without pain. I had seen what this thing was doing for the people in Kulivik, and Grace saw that hesitation. Do you know what it's like, she said, to live in a place where help never arrives on time? I didn't answer. Do you know what it's like to watch something finally work? She continued, and then be told you have to give it up because someone somewhere else might be losing something you can't even measure? It's not something, I said. They're losing pieces of themselves. And we've been losing people our whole lives, she said. The room felt smaller, the fluorescent lights harsher. This doesn't end well, I said. Nothing ends well, she replied. That's not the point. Then what is? Grace looked at me for a long moment. Then she said, the point is deciding who pays. We sat in silence for a while. The kind of silence that isn't empty. The kind that presses. Finally, I said, I want to see it. She didn't ask what I meant. You don't, she said. Oh, I do. No, she said, you want answers. That's not the same thing. I want to understand what's happening in that clinic. Grace hesitated. For the first time since the conversation started, she looked uncertain. That scared me more than anything she'd said. The clinic is empty at night, she said eventually. Between midnight and 5. No one goes in. No one comes out. You have a key. She gave me a look that was almost amused. I have a key to everything in Kulivik, she said. Somebody has to. We went at 1 in the morning, -42. Cold so deep it doesn't feel like temperature anymore. It feels like absence. The clinic sat on the north edge of town. Prefab building. Flat roof. Government issue. Dark. No lights. No sound. Grace unlocked the door. The moment we stepped inside, the cold stopped. Not faded. Stopped. Like we had crossed an invisible line. The air inside was warm. Still. Too still. No hum of a heater. No ticking of pipes, no movement at all, just warmth, existing without a source. The front room looked normal. Reception desk, plastic chairs, a corkboard with old notices pinned to it. The kind of place you'd expect to see a nurse behind a counter asking you to fill out a form. But there was no one there. We moved deeper. 2 exam rooms for standard equipment, paper-covered tables, metal cabinets, everything clean, everything unused. Then Grace opened the storage room. The smell hit first. Iodine, sharp enough to sting, and underneath it, something alive. Not rotten, not decayed, active, like the inside of a body exposed to air. The shelves were gone. The entire room was filled with white plastic crates, stacked from floor to ceiling, every one of them open. I stepped closer, and then I stopped, because I understood what I was looking at. Each crate wasn't a container. It was a mold. The inside of each one was shaped exactly like the inside of a human body. Not a generic shape, not symbolic, specific, detailed, different sizes, different structures, different proportions, one broader across the chest, one with a slight curve in the spine, one narrow, one thick, and one small, child-sized. My throat closed. "This is where it happens," Grace said. Her voice was steady. Too steady. "People go in through the front," she said. "They lie down on the table." "And then?" I asked. "In the morning, they're better." That's not what I asked. She didn't answer, because she didn't need to. I moved deeper into the room. My eyes adjusted, and that's when I saw it. At the top of the far wall, one crate, closed. Its surface was fogged from the inside, like condensation, and it was moving, slow, rhythmic, expanding, contracting, like breathing. "Grace," I said. "I see it," she replied. "We need to leave." "Not yet." She stepped forward, reached up, placed her hand against the surface. I grabbed her wrist. "Don't." She didn't pull away. "It's warm," she said. Her voice had changed. Softer. "It knows me." "What?" "It knows my knee," she whispered. "You know I've had a bad knee for years." Her hand trembled. "But it knows, and it wants to fix it." I pulled her back. Hard. "Grace." She blinked, like waking up. "It feels like kindness," she said. "That's the worst part. It doesn't feel like a trap," she continued. "It feels like something that genuinely wants to help." "And the cost?" I said. She looked at me. "The cost," she said, "comes from somewhere else." Silence filled the room. Heavy. Pressing. "That's why the elders called it a gift," she said. "Because it acts like one." "And refusing a gift?" "In our culture," she said, "refusing a gift has consequences." "Accepting this one does too." Grace nodded slowly. "Everything does," she said. Then she looked back at the crates. "The only question is, who pays?" We left after that. Locked the door. Walked back through the cold that felt almost clean compared to the air inside that room. Neither of us spoke on the way back, because we both understood the same thing now. This wasn't an accident. It wasn't a glitch. It wasn't something broken. It was something working, exactly as intended. We didn't talk about what we saw in the clinic the next morning. We didn't need to. There are some things that, once seen, don't require discussion. They settle into you. They change the shape of your thinking without asking permission. The crates had done that. The breathing one, most of all. I went back to the airport, Opened the operations building, turned on the lights, checked the systems, did my job. That was the strange part. Even after everything the routine held, the runway still needed to be cleared. The fuel still needed to be checked. The logbook still needed entries. And Wednesday was coming. I knew what would happen if I did nothing. The plane would land. The crates would come. The clinic would keep working. And somewhere in Bethel, 6 more people would lose something they didn't even know they had given. I also knew what would happen if I interfered, because Grace had already told me. People in Kulivik would get sick again. Not maybe. Not eventually. Immediately. I spent 2 days pretending I hadn't already made the decision, that I was weighing options, that I was thinking this through. I wasn't. By Tuesday night, I knew exactly what I was going to do. I didn't tell Grace, not because I didn't trust her, because I knew she would be right, and I was going to do it anyway. Wednesday, February 12th. I was at the airport before 10. The sky was flat and pale, the kind of sky that makes everything feel temporary. At 11:20, I got into the airport truck, drove onto the runway, and stopped in the middle, turned the engine off, left the truck sideways across the gravel, blocking the strip. I picked up the radio. My hand was steady. That surprised me. Tundra Link 471, this is Kulivik operations. Static. Then Harlan's voice. Kulivik TL-471, go ahead. The runway's blocked, I said. Silence. Say again, he replied. The runway's physically obstructed, do not attempt to land. Another pause. Longer this time. You're making a mistake, Harlan said. Not angry, not frustrated. Certain. Maybe, I said. But I'm done pretending those passengers don't exist. The manifest says 0 passengers. Then you've got nothing to lose by turning around. Silences. Then the engine. I could hear it. Even through the radio. A low, steady drone. Circling. I stepped out of the truck. Looked up. The plane was there. Small against the sky. Turning. Once. Twice. 3 times. And for a moment, I thought it might land anyway. Ignore me. Ignore the truck. Ignore the system. Because whatever was behind that flight didn't seem like the kind of thing that cared about procedure. But then, it turned south. Then the sound faded, and the sky was empty. I stood there for a long time, waiting for something, anything. A call from Deb, a call from the FAA, a call from someone, and nothing came. The silence felt like approval, or maybe recognition. It took 4 days. Saturday morning, Grace came to the airport. I knew something was wrong before she said a word. She looked older, not tired, not worn, older, like something had been taken out of her and not replaced. Thomas collapsed, she said. That was all, but it was enough. Both kidneys, she added, failed at once. I felt it land. He has maybe 3 days, she said, if we can't get him to Bethel. Grace, Mary Kilbear's daughter woke up blind again, she continued. Charlie Alexi's boy had a seizure this morning. First one in months. The words didn't come fast. They came steady, like a list, like something she had already accepted. It's reversing, I said. Yes. Because I stopped the flight? Yes. She didn't argue. She didn't soften it. She just let it be true. I sat down, because suddenly I wasn't sure I could stay standing. This is what you wanted, she said. No, I said, this is what you chose. That landed harder. People in Bethel were being hurt, I said. People here are being hurt now. It's not the same. Tell that to Thomas. Her voice broke. For the first time since I had known her. Tell that to Charlie's boy, she said. I didn't have anything to say to that, because there was no version of the argument that didn't end in someone paying. The difference is consent, I said finally. They didn't choose it. And we didn't choose not having doctors for 50 years, she snapped. Silence. Then quieter. You think this is simple, she said. I don't. You think this is right versus wrong. I don't. Then what is it? She looked at me. Really looked. It's survival, she said. And you decided to take it away. I swallowed. And what happens when it asks for more, I said. When the crates aren't enough. When it needs something bigger. When it stops fixing knees and starts asking for something else. That's a future problem. It's a now problem, I said. It's always been a now problem. We just let someone else deal with it. Grace wiped her face. Then she said the thing that I still hear when I wake up at night. You don't get to make this decision for us. The words weren't loud. They didn't need to be. You're not from here, she said. You came because your life fell apart somewhere else. You've been here 5 months. I've been here my whole life. Thomas has been here his whole life. And you decided, she stopped, started again. You decided by yourself without asking anyone to take away the only thing that ever worked. She turned, walked out, and left me there. Thomas was medevaced on Tuesday. He survived, but he lost one kidney permanently. Mary Kilbear's daughter learned to live with one eye again. Charlie Alexi's boy went back on medication, 70% effective. I did not block the runway the following Wednesday. The plane landed. The crates came. And by Friday, the seizures stopped again. The pain eased. The healing returned. I didn't block it the week after that either, because now I knew exactly what I was choosing, and I also knew I wasn't strong enough to keep choosing the alternative. I filed the report anyway, even after everything, even after I stopped blocking the runway, even after I understood what the system had already decided. I wrote it all down, every date, every discrepancy, every crate, every observation, the manifests that said 0, the booking records that said otherwise, the clinic outcomes, the phone call from Rena Chak. I named names, Tundra Link, DOT and PF, Deb Kilrea, Harlan Driss. I attached copies of my notebook. Pages of it, handwritten, detailed. Then I sent it to the FAA, to the Flight Standards District Office in Anchorage, to anyone with an address that sounded like it might still care about procedure. I waited. 3 weeks later, I got a letter. It wasn't from the FAA. It was from DOT and PF. Due to budget restructuring, it said, your position at Kulivik Regional Airport has been eliminated. And that was it. No mention of the report, no request for clarification, no follow-up questions. Just removed. I was offered a transfer. Juneau, maintenance or lower responsibility, more oversight. I took the severance because I understood what the offer actually meant. It wasn't a reassignment, it was an exit. I moved to Anchorage, got an apartment, got a job at a hardware store. Helen filed for divorce. I didn't contest it. I called the FAA twice. The second time, someone actually answered. He confirmed they had received my report. He confirmed it had been reviewed. Then he said, no action is warranted at this time. I asked him what that meant. There was a pause. Then he repeated, it means no action is warranted at this time. His voice didn't sound dismissive. It sounded tired, like he had said that sentence too many times, like it wasn't an answer. It was a conclusion. That was the moment it became clear. Not just Deb, not just Harlan. The system knew. Maybe not everything, but enough. Enough to recognize the pattern. Enough to understand the exchange. Enough to decide not to interfere, because interfering meant breaking something that was working, and letting it continue meant someone else paid the cost. I don't go near airports anymore, sir. I don't watch planes. I don't look at manifests. I tell myself that's because I moved on. It isn't. It's because I'm afraid of what I'll see. Elias writes to me sometimes. Actual letters. Paper. He writes about school. About the weather. About his ATV. He never mentions the Wednesday flight. He never mentions the clinic. But in his last letter, he wrote something I can't stop thinking about. The plane still comes every Wednesday, he wrote. I don't watch it anymore. I don't wave. I used to want to be a pilot. I don't want to fly anywhere now. I think flying takes things from people and puts other things back. The other things look the same, but they aren't. I folded that letter 3 times, put it in a drawer, took it out again the next day, and read it until the paper felt soft. I think about Grace, about what she said. You don't get to make this decision for us. I think about Thomas, about his kidneys, about what they cost. I think about the crates, about the shapes inside them, about the one that was small. I think about Rena Chack, about the way her voice changed, about how quickly fear can be removed from a person, and I think about Harlan, flying that plane every Wednesday, never once looking behind him. But more than anything, I think about the clinic, warm, still, waiting, offering. 2 days after I arrived in Anchorage, I found something in my coat pocket, a piece of folded paper. I don't remember putting it there. I don't remember receiving it. It was a boarding pass, Tundra Link, flight TL471, Bethel to Kulivik, 1 passenger. My name. The date said next Wednesday. I threw it away. The next morning, there was another one in my mailbox, then another, folded into a book I was reading. Then another, slipped under my door. Always the same. Always next Wednesday. It has been next Wednesday. For 11 months. I haven't gone. I haven't flown. I go to work. I come home. I lock my door. I throw the boarding pass away. And the next day, there's another one. But there's something I haven't told anyone. Something I'm telling you now, because I don't want to carry it alone anymore. My back hurts. Deep. Constant. For months now. It's getting worse. Some mornings, I can barely stand. Last week, I went to a clinic, a normal one. Here in Anchorage, they did an MRI. The doctor showed me the scan, pointed to something along my spine. There's a formation here, she said. It's not a tumor, not a disc issue. She hesitated. Honestly, I've never seen anything like it. It looks like a cavity, a space where something used to be, a hollow. I didn't say anything because I already knew. I've seen the molds. I've seen what fits inside them. And I know the flight to Kulivik would fix it. I know the clinic would fix it. I know I would lie down, close my eyes, and wake up whole. And the cost would come from someone else, someone in Bethel, someone who never knew they paid. I haven't gone. I want you to know that. It's April, and I haven't gone. But the boarding pass is on my table right now, and my back hurts so badly. I slept on the floor last night, and I am running out of reasons that feel bigger than the pain. If you don't hear from me again, don't look for me in Anchorage. Look at the manifest. I'll be the one who isn't there.